Jai Guruji. Jai Guruji. Good evening, everyone. We are going to go straight into chapter 28. Hi, Jai Guruji. So chapter 20, Kashi, reborn and rediscovered. Please do not go into the water. Let us bathe by dipping our buckets. I was addressing the young Ranchi students who were accompanying me on an 8-mile hike to a neighboring hill. The pond before us was inviting, but a distaste for it had arisen in my mind. The group around me followed my example of dipping buckets, but a few lads yielded to the temptation of the cool waters. No sooner had they dived than large water snakes wiggled around them. The boys came out of the pond with comical alacrity. We enjoyed a picnic lunch after we reached our destination. I sat under a tree surrounded by a group of students. Finding me an inspirational mood, they plied me with questions. Please tell me, sir, one youth inquired, if I shall always stay with you in the path of renunciation. Ah, no, I replied. You will be forcibly taken away to your home, and later you will marry. Incredulous, he made a vehement protest. Only if I am dead can I be carried home. But in a few months, his parents arrived to take him away. In spite of his tearful resistance, some years later, he did marry. After answering many questions, I was addressed by a lad named Kashi. He was about 12 years old, a brilliant student and beloved by all. Sir, he said, what will be my fate? You shall soon be dead. The reply came from my lips with an irresistible force. This unexpected disclosure shocked and grieved me, as well as everyone present. Silently rebuking myself as an enfant terrible, I refused to answer further questions. On our return to the school, Kashi came to my room. If I die, will you find me when I am reborn and bring me again to the spiritual path? He sought. I felt constrained to refuse this difficult occult responsibility. But for weeks afterwards, Kashi pressed me doggedly. Seeing him unnerved to the breaking point, I finally consoled him. Yes, I promised. If the Heavenly Father lends his aid, I will try to find you. During the summer vacation, I started on a short trip. Regretting that I could not take Kashi with me, I called him to my room before leaving and carefully instructed him to remain against all persuasion in the spiritual vibrations of the school. Somehow, I felt that if he did not go home, he might avoid the impending calamity. No sooner had I left than Kashi's father arrived in Ranchi. For 15 days, he tried to break the will of his son, explaining that if Kashi would go to Calcutta for only 4 days to see his mother, he could then return. Kashi persistently refused. The father finally said he would take the boy away with the help of the police. The threat disturbed Kashi, who was unwilling to be the cause of any unfavorable publicity to the school. He saw no choice but to go. I returned to Ranchi a few days later. When I heard how Kashi had been removed, I entrained at once for Calcutta. There, I engaged a horse cab. Very strangely, as the vehicle passed beyond the Howrah Bridge over the Ganges, I beheld Kashi's father and other relatives in mourning clothes. Shouting to my driver to stop, I rushed out and glared at the unfortunate father. Mr. Murderer, I cried somewhat unreasonably, you have killed my boy. The father had already realized the wrong he had done, so forcibly bringing Kashi to Calcutta. During the few days the boy had been there, he had eaten contaminated food, contracted cholera, and passed on. My love for Kashi and the pledge to find him after death night and day haunted me. No matter where I went, his face loomed up before me. I began a memorable search for him, even as long ago I had searched for my lost mother. I felt that inasmuch as God had given me the faculty of reason, I must utilize it and tax my powers to the utmost in order to discover the subtle laws by which I could know the boy's astral whereabouts. He was a soul, vibrating with unfulfilled desires, I realized, a mass of light floating somewhere amidst millions of luminous souls in the astral regions. How was I to tune in with him among so many vibrating lights of other souls? Using a secret yoga technique, I broadcasted my love to Kashi's soul through the microphone of the spiritual eye, the inner point between the eyebrows. With the antenna of upraised hands and fingers, I often turned myself round and round, trying to locate the direction in which he had been reborn as an embryo. I hoped to receive response from him in the concentration-tuned radio of my heart. I intuitively felt that Kashi would soon return to the earth, and that if I kept unceasingly broadcasting my call to him, his soul would reply. I knew that the slightest impulse sent by Kashi would be felt in my fingers, hands, arms, spine, and nerves. With undiminished zeal, I practiced the yoga method steadily for about 6 months after Kashi's death. Walking with a few friends one morning in the crowded Beau Bazaar section of Calcutta, I lifted my hands in the usual manner. For the first time, there was response. I thrilled to detect electrical impulses trickling down my fingers and palms. These currents translated themselves into one overpowering thought from a deep recess of my consciousness. I am Kashi. I am Kashi. Come to me. The thought became almost audible as I concentrated on my heart radio. In the characteristic, slightly hoarse whisper of Kashi, I heard his summons again and again. I seized the arm of one of my companions, Prakash Das, and smiled at him joyfully. It looks as though I have located Kashi. I began to turn round and round to the undisguised amusement of my friends and the passing throng. The electrical impulses tingled through my fingers only when I faced toward a nearby path, aptly named Serpentine Lane. The astral currents disappeared when I turned in other directions. Ah, I exclaimed, Kashi's soul must be living in the womb of some mother whose home is in the lane. My companions and I approached closer to Serpentine Lane. The vibrations in my upraised hands grew stronger, more pronounced. As if by a magnet, I was pulled towards the right side of the road. Reaching the entrance of the certain house, I was astounded to find myself transfixed. I knocked at the door in a state of intense excitement, holding my very breath. I felt that the successful end had come for my long, arduous, and certainly unusual quest. The door was opened by a servant who told me her master was at home. He descended the stairway from the second floor and smiled at me inquiringly. I hardly knew how to frame my question, and at once pertinent and impertinent. Please tell me, sir, if you and your wife have been expecting a child for about 6 months. Yes, it is so. Seeing that I was a Swami, a renunciate, attired in the traditional orange cloth, he added politely, pray inform me how you know my affairs. When he heard about Kashi and the promise I had given, the astonished man believed my story. A male child of fair complexion will be born to you, I told him. He will have a broad face with a cow lick atop his forehead. His disposition will be notably spiritual. I felt certain that the coming child would bear these resemblances of Kashi. Later, I visited the child, whose parents had given him his old name of Kashi. Even in infancy, he was strikingly similar in appearance to my dear Ranchi student. The child showed me an instantaneous affection. The attraction of the past awoke with redoubled intensity. Years later, the teenage boy wrote me during my stay in America. He explained his deep longing to follow the path of a renunciate. I directed him to a Himalayan master who to this day guides the reborn Kashi. Wow. So chapter 29, Rabindranath Tagore and I compare schools. Rabindranath Tagore taught us to sing as a natural form of self-expression, like the birds. Bholanath, a bright 14-year-old lad at my Ranchi school, gave me this explanation after I had complimented him one morning on his melodious outbursts. With or without provocation, the boy poured forth a tuneful stream. He had previously attended the famous Tagore school of Shantiniketan, haven of peace, at Bhopur. The songs of Rabindranath have been on my lips since early youth, I told my companion. All Bengal, even the unlettered peasants, delights in his lofty verse. Bola and I sang together a few restraints from Tagore, who has set to music thousands of Indian poems, some original and others of hoary antiquity. I met Rabindranath soon after he had received the Nobel Prize for Literature. I remarked after our vocalization, I was drawn to visit him because I admired his undiplomatic courage in disposing of his literary critics, I chuckled. Bola curiously inquired the story. The scholars severely flayed Tagore for introducing a new style into Bengali poetry, I began. He mixed colloquial and classical expressions, ignoring all the prescribed limitations dear to the Pandit's hearts. His songs embody deep philosophical truth in emotionally appealing terms, with little regard for the accepted literary forms. One influential critic slightly referred to Rabindranath as a pigeon poet who sold his cooings in print for a rupee. But Tagore's revenge was at hand. The whole Western world paid homage at his feet soon after he had translated into English his Gitanjali, song offerings. A trainload of pundits, including his one-time critics, went to Shantiniketan to offer their congratulations. Rabindranath received his guests only after an intentionally long delay, and then heard their praise in stoic silence. Finally, he turned against them their own habitual weapons of criticism. Gentlemen, he said, the fragrant honors you here bestow are incongruously mingled with the putrid odors of your past contempt. Is there possibly any connection between my award of the Nobel Prize and you suddenly acute powers of appreciation? I am still the same poet who displeased you when I first offered my humble flowers at the shrine of Bengal. The newspapers published an account of the bold chastisement given by Tagore. I admired the outspoken words of a man unhypnotized by flattery. I went on. I was introduced to Rabindranath in Calcutta by Secretary Mr. C.F. Andrews. Rabindranath in Calcutta by his secretary, Mr. C.F. Andrews, who was simply attired in a Bengali attire in a Bengali dhoti. He referred lovingly to Tagore as his Gurudev. Rabindranath received me graciously. He emanated a soothing aura of charm, culture, and courtliness. Replying to my question about his literary background, Tagore told me that one ancient source of his inspiration, besides our religious epics, had been the classical poet Vidyapati. Inspired by these memories, I began to sing Tagore's version of an old Bengali song, Light the Lamp of Thy Love. Bola and I chanted joyously as we strolled over the Vidyalaya grounds. About 2 years after founding the Ramchi school, I received an invitation from Rabindranath to visit him at Shantiniketan in order to discuss our educational ideals. I went gladly. The poet was seated in his study when I entered. I thought then, as at our first meeting, that he was as striking a model of superb manhood as any painter could desire. His beautifully chiseled face, nobly patrician, was framed in long hair and flowing beard, large, melting eyes, an angelic smile, and a voice of flute-like quality, which was literally enchanting, stalwart, tall, and grave. He combined an almost womanly tenderness with the delightful spontaneity of a child. No idealized conception of a poet could find more suitable embodiment than in this gentle singer. Tagore and I were soon deep in a comparative study of our schools, both founded along unorthodox lines. We discovered many identical features: outdoor instruction, simplicity, ample scope for the child's creative spirit. Rabindranath, however, laid considerable stress on the study of literature and poetry and the self-expression through music and song, which I had already noted in the case of Bola. The Shantiniketan children observed periods of silence, but were given no special yoga training. The poet listened with flattering attention to my description of the energizing yogoda exercises and the yoga concentration techniques which are taught to all students at Ranchi. Tagore told me of his own early educational struggles. I fled from school after the 5th grade, he said, laughing. I could readily understand how his innate poetic delicacy had been affronted by the dreary disciplinary atmosphere of a schoolroom. That is why I opened Shantiniketan under the shady trees and the glories of the sky. He motioned eloquently to a little group studying in the beautiful garden. A child is in his natural setting amidst the flowers and songbirds. Only thus may he fully express the hidden wealth of his individual endowment. True education can never be crammed and pumped from without. Rather, it must aid in bringing spontaneity to the surface, the infinite hoards of wisdom within. I agreed. The idealistic and hero-worshipping instincts of the young are starved on an exclusive diet of statistics and chronological eras. The poet spoke lovingly of his father, Devandranath, who had inspired the Shantiniketan beginnings. Father presented me with this fertile land where he had already built a guest house and temple. Rabindranath told me, I started my educational experiment here in 1901 with only 10 boys. The 8,000 pounds which came with the Nobel Prize all went for the upkeep of the school. The elder Tagore, Devendranath, known far and wide as Maharishi, was a very remarkable man, as one may discover from his autobiography. 2 years of his manhood was spent in meditation in the Himalayas. In turn, his father, Dwarkanath Tagore, had been celebrated throughout Bengal for his munificent public benefactions. From his illustrious tree has sprung a family of geniuses. So true. Not Rabindranath alone, all his relatives have distinguished themselves in creative expression. His brothers, Gogonindra and Abanindra, are among the foremost artists of India. Another brother, Vijindra, is a deep-seeing philosopher. Vijindra is a deep-seeing philosopher, at whose gentle call the birds and woodlands creatures respond. Rabindranath invited me to stay overnight in the guest house. It was indeed a charming spectacle. In the evening, to see the poet seated with a group in the patio. Time unfolded backward. The scene before me was like that of an ancient hermitage. The joyous singer, encircled by his devotees, all enrolled in divine love. Tagore knitted each tie with the chords of harmony. Never assertive, he drew and captured the heart of an irresistible magnetism. Rare blossom of poetry blooming in the garden of the Lord, attracting others by a natural fragrance. In his melodious voice, Rabindranath read to us a few of his exquisite poems, newly created. Most of his songs and plays written for the delectation of his students have been composed at Shantiniketan. The beauty of his lines to me lies in the art of referring to God in nearly every stanza, yet seldom mentioning the sacred name. Drunk with the bliss of singing, he wrote, I forget myself and call thee friend who art my Lord. So when we engage in any kind of creativity, when we must remain calm. This is what I've learned. When I sit and do calligraphy, first of all, I seek Guruji's blessings. When I'm about to embark on a journey of writing my books, I again, do the mantra jap. I listen to the Gurbani Shabad blessed by Guruji, and that centers me, calms me. And when we are transported to his love, then the creativity flows from a different level of our consciousness. So it is important that when we're creative, we even leave our creativity to him. We surrender that to him, and that then he takes over our art, our reading, our writing, whatever it may be. It could be any form of creativity. And we are all creative beings. The creativity is lying latent within each one of us. So we are all geniuses, actually, in our own ways. And to hone our skills is very important, because that is the gift that God has given us. Like this saying, what we are is God's gift to us, but what we make of ourselves is our gift to God. So it is important to hone the natural talents that God has given us, because that is his gift to us. The following day after lunch, I bade the poet a reluctant farewell. I rejoice that his little school has now grown to an international university, Viswa Bharat, where scholars of all lands have found an ideal setting, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms toward perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. Beautiful words by Rabindranath Tagore. Beautiful. So the law of miracles, we have actually, with his grace, reached halfway now through our reading, and I hope you're all engaged. Hope your minds are engaged, your hearts are blossoming with gyan and knowledge that we will apply on a daily basis, hopefully. The more we learn from this book, I think the more wisdom we are gaining, and it is his meher that we're sitting here and reading this together, because I think in an isolated manner, it does get a little heavy and kind of dreary at times. So we all give up, because I think most of us have read this book, and hats off to those who've gone cover to cover. But there are many of us who have read it halfway, and then we have unread it. So we just haven't absorbed and soaked in the nectar of its wisdom completely. But now Guruji has given us this opportunity. So without further ado, let's peruse the pages of chapter 13 and absorb whatever wisdom is being shared. The law of miracles. The great novelist Leo Tolstoy wrote a delightful story, The Three Hermits. His friend Nicholas Roerich has summarized the tale as follows. On an island, there lived three old hermits. They were so simple that the only prayer they used was, "We are three, thou art three, have mercy on us." Great miracles were manifested during this naive prayer. The local bishop came to hear about the three hermits and their inadmissible prayer and decided to visit them in order to teach them the canonical invocations. He arrived on the island, told the hermits that their heavenly petition was undignified, and taught them many of the customary prayers. The bishop then left on a boat. He saw, following the ship, a radiant light. As it approached, he discerned the three hermits who were holding hands and running upon the waves in an effort to overtake the vessel. "We have forgotten the prayers you taught us," they cried, as they reached the bishop, "and have hastened to ask you to repeat them." The old bishop shook his head. "Dear ones," he replied humbly, "continue to live with your old prayer. How did the three saints walk on the water? How did Christ resurrect his crucified body? How did Larry Mache and Sri Yukteswara perform their miracles? Modern science has, as yet, no answer. Though, with the advent of the atomic bomb and the wonders of radar, the scope of the world mind has been abruptly enlarged. The word impossible is becoming less prominent in the scientific vocabulary. The ancient Vedic scriptures declare that the physical world operates under one fundamental law of Maya, the principle of relativity and duality. God, the soul life, is an absolute unity. He cannot appear as a separate and diverse manifestations of a creation except under a false or unreal veil. That cosmic illusion is Maya. Every great scientific discovery of modern times has served as a confirmation of the simple pronouncement of the rishis. Newton's law of motion is a law of Maya. To every action, there is always an equal and contrary reaction. The mutual actions of any two bodies are always equal and oppositely directed. Action and reaction are thus exactly equal. To have a single force is impossible. There must be and always is a pair of forces equal and opposite. Fundamental natural activities all betray their Maic origin. Electricity, for example, is a phenomenon of repulsion and attraction. Its electrons and protons are electrical opposites. Another example, the atom or final particle of matter is, like the Earth itself, a magnet with positive and negative poles. The entire phenomenal world is under the inexorable sway of polarity. No law of physics, chemistry, or any other science is ever found free from inherent opposite or contrasted principles. Physical science, then, cannot formulate laws outside of Maya, the very texture and structure of creation. Nature herself is Maya. Natural science must perforce deal with her ineluctable quiddity. In her own domain, she is eternal and inexhaustible. Future scientists can do no more than probe one aspect after another of her varied infinitude. Science thus remains in a perpetual flux, unable to reach finality. Fit indeed to formulate the laws of an already existing and functioning cosmos, but powerless to detect the law, framer, and sole operator. The majestic manifestations of gravitation and electricity have become known, but what gravitation and electricity are, no mortal knoweth. To surmount Maya was a task assigned to the human race by the millennial prophets. To rise above the duality of creation and perceive the unity of the Creator was conceived of as man's highest goal. Those who cling to the cosmic illusion must accept its essential law of polarity, flow and ebb, rise and fall, day and night, pleasure and pain, good and evil, birth and death. This cyclic pattern assumes a certain anguishing monotony After man has gone through a few hundred human births, he begins to cast a hopeful eye beyond the compulsions of Maya. To tear the veil of Maya is to pierce the secret of creation. The yogi, who thus denudes the universe, is the only true monotheist. All others are worshipping heathen images. So long as man remains subject to the dualistic delusions of nature, the Janus-faced Maya is his goddess. He cannot know the one true God. The world illusion, Maya, is individually called avidya, literally not knowledge, ignorance, delusion. Maya or avidya can never be destroyed through intellectual conviction or analysis, but solely through attaining the interior state of nirbha kalpa samadhi. The Old Testament prophets and seers of all lands and ages spoke from that state of consciousness. Ezekiel says, afterwards he brought me to the gate, even the gate that looketh toward the east, and behold, the glory of the God of Israel came from the way of the east, and his voice was like a noise of many waters, and the earth shined with his glory. Through the divine eye in the forehead, east, the yogi sells his consciousness into omnipresence, hearing the word or Om, divine sound of many waters or vibrations, which is the sole reality of creation. Among the trillion mysteries of the cosmos, the most phenomenal is light. Unlike sound waves, whose transmission requires air or other material media, light waves pass freely through the vacuum of interstellar space. Even the hypothetical ether, held as the interplanetary medium of light in the undulatory theory, can be discarded on the Einsteinian grounds that the geographical properties of space render the theory of ether unnecessary. Under either hypothesis, light remains the most subtle, the freest from material dependence of any natural manifestations. In the gigantic conceptions of Einstein, the velocity of light, 186,000 miles per second, dominates the whole theory of relativity. He proves mathematically that the velocity of light is, so far as man's finite mind is concerned, the only constant in a universe of unstable flux. On the sole absolute of light velocity depend all human standards of time and space, not abstractly eternal, as hitherto considered. Time and space are relative and finite factors, deriving their measurement validity only in reference to the yardstick of light velocity. In joining space as a dimensional relativity, time has surrendered age-old claims to a changeless value. Time is now stripped to its rightful nature, a simple essence of ambiguity. With a few equational strokes of his pen, Einstein has banished from the cosmos every fixed reality except that of light. In a later development, his unified field theory, the great physicist embodies in one mathematical formula the laws of gravitation and of electromagnetism. Reducing the cosmical structure to variations on a single law, Einstein reaches across the age to the rishis who proclaimed a sole texture of creation, that of a protean Maya. On the epochal theory of relativity have arisen the mathematical possibilities of exploring the ultimate atom. Great scientists are now boldly asserting not only that the atom is energy rather than matter, but that atomic energy is essentially mind stuff. The frank realization that physical science is concerned with a world of shadows is one of the most significant advances. So author Stanley Eddington writes, in the nature of the physical world, in the world of physics, we watch a shadowgraph performance of the drama of familiar life. The shadow of my elbow rests on the shadow table as the shadow ink flows over the shadow paper. It is all symbolic, and as a symbol, the physicist leaves it. Then comes the alchemist mind, who transmutes the symbols. To put the conclusion crudely, the stuff of the world is mind stuff. The realistic matter and fields of force of former physical theory are altogether irrelevant, except insofar as the mind stuff has itself spun these imaginings. The external world has thus become a world of shadows. In removing our illusions, we have removed the substance, for indeed we have not seen that substance. We have seen that substance is one of the greatest of our illusions. With the recent discovery of the electron microscope came definite proof of the light essence of atoms and of the inescapable duality of nature. The New York Times gave the following report of a 1937 demonstration of the electron microscope before a meeting of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. The crystalline structure of tungsten, hitherto known only indirectly by means of X-rays, stood outlined boldly on a fluorescent screen, showing 9 atoms in their correct positions in the space lattice, a cube with 1 atom in each corner and 1 in the center. The atoms in the crystal lattice of the tungsten appeared on the fluorescent screen as points of light, arranged in geometric pattern. Against this crystal cube of light, the bombarding molecules of air could be observed as dancing points of light, similar to points of sunlight shimmering on moving waters. The principle of the electron microscope was first discovered in 1927 by Drs. Clinton J. Davison and Lester H. Germer of the Bell Telephone Laboratories. New York City, who found that the electron had a dual personality partaking of the characteristic of both a particle and a wave. The wave quality gave the electron the characteristic of light, and a search was begun to devise means for focusing electrons in a manner similar to the focusing of light by means of a lens. For his discovery of the Jekyll-Hyde quality of the electron, which corroborated the prediction made in 1924 by de Broglie, French Nobel Prize winning physicist, and showed that the entire realm of physical nature had a dual personality. Dr. Davison also received the Nobel Prize in Physics. The stream of knowledge, Sir James Jeans writes, in The Mysterious Universe, is heading towards a non-mechanical reality. The universe begins to look more like a great thought than like a great machine. 20th century science is thus sounding like a page from the Holy Vedas. From science, then, if it must be so, let man learn the philosophical truth that there is no material universe. Its warp and woof is Maya, illusion. Its mirages of reality or breakdown under analysis. As one by one, the reassuring props of a physical cosmos crash beneath him, man dimly perceives his idolatrous reliance, his past transgression of the divine command, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." In his famous equation, outlining the equivalence of mass and energy, Einstein proved that the energy in any particle of matter is equal to its mass or weight multiplied by the square of the velocity of light. The release of the atomic energies is brought about through the annihilation of the material particles. The death of matter has been the birth of an atomic age. Light velocity is a mathematical standard or constant, not because there is an absolute value in 186,000 miles a second, but because no material body whose mass increases with its velocity can ever attain the velocity of light. Stated another way, only a material body whose matter is infinite could equal the velocity of light. This conception brings us to the law of miracles. The masters who are able to materialize and dematerialize their bodies or any other object and to move with the velocity of light and to utilize the creative light rays in bringing into instant visibility any physical manifestations have fulfilled the necessary Einsteinian condition. Their mass is infinite. The consciousness of a perfected yogi is effortlessly identified, not with a narrow body, but with the universal structure. Gravitation, whether the force of Newton or the Einsteinian manifestations of inertia, is powerless to compel a master to exhibit the property of weight, which is the distinguishing gravitational condition of all material objects. He who knows himself as the omnipresent spirit is subject no longer to the rigidities of a body in time and space. The imprisoning rings pass not, have yielded to the solvent I am he. Fiat lux, and there was light. God's first command to his ordered creation, Genesis 1:3, brought into being the only atomic reality, light, when he said, let there be light. On the beams of his immaterial medium occur all divine manifestations. Devotees of every age testify to the appearance of God as flame and light. The King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, who only hath immortality, dwelling in the light, which no man can approach unto. So we also, see Guruji, and we always say, Hamare andar apni jyot jala dijiye. Even with Guruji, we always, perceive him to be the light, the ultimate light, whether we perceive him as jyot, even in Baramandir, when we go and we see that jyot just at the Samadhi, there's so many times he's given his darshan in that, wondrous flame. So the flame and the light is associated with Guruji. I do recall, the final moments of my mother's life, and she was leaving her last breath. And just as she was, now in England, there is no such thing as fluctuation of electricity. And all 5 siblings were sitting surrounding her bed, encompassing her bed. And I just closed my eyes, held her palm of the hand, and I just prayed to Guruji that Guruji, now she's going, give me a sign that you're there. And again, through light, he blessed, and the light began to flicker undisputably. The light in the hospice began to flicker, and within seconds she was gone. So Guruji speaks to us through the light also. Even when we are sitting at home and we are remembering Guruji, really with our heart and soul, when we're remembering him, suddenly there will be a flicker of light, the lamp will flicker, or your jyot that you've lit will start shining bright. And this is something that happened to me on more than one occasion when I am asking him to show me his presence. So Guruji has his ways, and of course, it is all very evident in our worship to him. A yogi who through perfect meditation has merged his consciousness with the Creator perceives a cosmical essence as light. To him, then, there is no difference between the light rays composing water and the light rays composing land. Free from matter consciousness, free from the 3 dimensions of space and 4th dimension of time, a master transfers his body of light with equal ease over the light rays of earth, water, fire, or air. Long concentration on the liberating spiritual eye has enabled the yogi to destroy all delusions concerning matter and its gravitational weight. Henceforth, he sees the universe as an essentially undifferentiated mass of light. Optical images, Dr. L.T. Troland of Harvard tells us, are built up on the same principle as the ordinary halftone engravings. That is, they are made up of minute dottings or striplings far too small to be detected by the eye. The sensitiveness of the retina is so great that a visual sensation can be produced by relatively few quanta of the right kind of light. Through a master's divine knowledge of light phenomena, he can instantly project into perceptible manifestation the ubiquitous light atoms. The actual form of the projection, whether it be a tree, a medicine, a human body, is in conformance with the yogi's powers of will and of visualization. In man's dream consciousness, where he has loosened in sleep his clutch on the egoistic limitations that daily hem him round, the omnipotence of his mind has a nightly demonstration. Lo, there in the dream stand the long dead friends, the remotest continents, the resurrected scenes of his childhood. With that free and unconditioned consciousness known to all men in the phenomena of dreams, the God-tuned master has forged a never-severed link. Innocent of all personal motives and employing the creative will bestowed on him by the creator, the yogi rearranges the light atoms of the universe to satisfy any sincere prayer of a devotee. So for this purpose were man and creation made, that he should rise up as master of Maya, knowing his dominion over the cosmos. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over ever creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So we were actually made in the image of God, but on separating from God and getting into the Maya of the world, we forgot and we disconnected. And that's where misery comes in every human being's life, when we are disconnected from divinity, because we are made in his image and we are meant to be connected and remain connected. But this whole illusory world has removed us from divinity. And with Guruji's meher, his eternal grace, we are endeavoring at least to reconnect to the divine and to know our own true selves and to live in his shadows and not in the shadow of the world, which keeps us in the clutches of delusion and the materialism and consumerism. In 1915, shortly after I had entered the Swami order, I witnessed a vision of violent contrasts. In it, the relativity of human consciousness was vividly established. I clearly perceived the unity of the eternal light behind the painful dualities of Maya. The vision descended on me as I sat one morning in my little attic room in Father's Gurpur Road home. For months, World War I had been raging in Europe. I reflected sadly on the vast toil of death. As I closed my eyes in meditation, my consciousness was suddenly transferred to the body of a captain in command of a battleship. The thunder of guns split the air as shots were exchanged between shore batteries and the ship's cannons. A huge shell hit the powder magazine and tore my ship asunder. I jumped into the water, together with a few sailors who had survived the explosion. Heart pounding, I reached the shore safely, but alas, a stray bullet ended its furious flight in my chest. I felt groaning to the ground. My whole body was paralyzed. Yet I was aware of possessing it as one is conscious of a leg gone to sleep. At last, the mysterious footstep of death has caught up with me, I thought. With a final sigh, I was about to sink into unconsciousness when, lo, I found myself seated in the lotus posture in the Gurpur Road room. Hysterical tears poured forth as I joyfully stroked and pinched my regained possession, my body, a body free from any bullet hole in the breast. I rocked to and fro, inhaling and exhaling to assure myself that I was alive. Amidst these self-congratulations, again I found my consciousness transferred to the captain's dead body by the gory shore. Utter confusion of mind came upon me. Lord, I prayed, am I dead or am I alive? A dazzling play of light filled the entire horizon. A soft rumbling vibration formed itself into words. What has life or death to do with light? In the image of my light, I made you. The relativities of life and death belong to the cosmic dream. Behold your dreamless being. Awake, my child, awake. This is what Guruji used to say to me. He's came to awaken us. He said, Tonu yaad dilana aaya ki Rab hai. And then when yaad dilana aaya, you are all made in the image of God. And he's come to awaken us to our truth. So no matter what's happening in the external world, the inner world has to remain awake. And when we are awake, then we realize and understand that whatever's happening in the external is all Maya. It's all an illusion. And we are not affected by it. And we are not saddened by it. We are neither affected by extreme joy or extreme sadness. We manage to maintain an equilibrium. And that is his grace. The equilibrium, the balance that he came to teach us. As steps in man's awakening, the Lord inspires scientists to discover at the right time and place the secrets of his creation. Many modern discoveries help men to apprehend the cosmos as a varied expression of one power, light, guided by divine intelligence. The wonders of the motion picture, of radio, of television, of radar, of the photoelectric cell, the all-seeing electric eye, of atomic energies are all based on the electromagnetic phenomena of light. The motion picture art can portray any miracle. From an impressive visual standpoint, no marvel is barred to trick photography. A man's transparent astral body can be seen rising from his gross physical form. He can walk on the water, resurrect the dead, reverse the natural sequence of developments, and play havoc with time and space. Assembling the light images as he pleases, the photographer achieves optical wonders, which a true master produces with actual light rays. The lifelike images of the motion picture illustrate many truths concerning creation. The cosmic director has written his own plays and assembled the tremendous cast for the pageant of the centuries. From the dark booth of eternity, he pours his creative beam through the films of successive ages, and the pictures are thrown on the screen of space. Just as a motion picture, images appear to be real, but are only combinations of light and shade, so also is the universal variety a delusive seeming. So it's all light and shade. It's an interplay. Life is an interplay of light and shade, light and darkness. So like I said, everything has an opposite, a polarity, sadness, joy, richness, poverty. Everything has an opposite. And this is what life is. The planetary spheres, there's just, so I'm going to complete this chapter. There's literally just 2 pages left. And then we'll call it a day. The lifelike images of the motion picture illustrate many truths concerning creation. The cosmic director has written his own plays and assembled a tremendous cast. From dark booth of eternity, he pours his creative beam through the films of successive ages, and the pictures are thrown on the screen of space. Just as the motion picture images appear to be real, but are only combinations of light and shade, so is the universal variety of delusive seeming. The planetary spheres, with their countless forms of life, are nothing but figures in a cosmic motion picture. Temporarily true to 5 sense perceptions as the scenes are cast on the screen of man's consciousness by the infinite creative being. A cinema audience can look up and see that all screen images are appearing through the instrumentality of one imageless beam of light. The colorful universal drama is similarly issuing from the single white light of a cosmic source. With inconceivable ingenuity, God is staging an entertainment for his human children, making them actors as well as audience in his planetary theater. Nicely said. One day, I entered a motion picture house to view a newsreel of the European battlefields. World War I was still being waged in the West. The newsreel recorded the carnage with such realism that I left the theatre with a troubled heart. Lord, I prayed, why dost thou permit such suffering? This is a lot of people's question. And why war? Why suffering? Why poverty? Why extreme illnesses? So he replies, to my intense surprise, an instant answer came in the form of a vision of the actual European battlefields. The horror of the struggle, filled with the dead and dying, far surpassed in ferocity any representation of the newsreel. Look intently, a gentle voice spoke to my inner consciousness. You will see that these scenes now being enacted in France are nothing but a play of chiaroscuro. They are the cosmic motion picture, as real and as unreal as the theatre newsreel you have just seen, a play within a play. My heart was still not comforted. The divine voice went on. Creation is light and shadow both, else no picture is possible. The good and evil of Maya must ever alternate in supremacy. If joy was ceaseless here in this world, would man ever seek another? Without suffering, he scarcely cares to recall that he has forsaken his eternal home. Pain is a prod to remembrance. The way of escape is through wisdom. The tragedy of death is unreal. Those who shudder at it are like an ignorant actor who dies of fright on the stage when nothing more is fired at him than a blank cartridge. My sons are the children of light. They will not sleep forever in delusion. So Guruji will never leave us in that Maya. He will not leave us enmeshed in that Maya. He is here to awaken us so that we are not afraid of anything, not even death, because we are so awake that we know that death is but an interval in the larger movie that we all are part of and we enact our roles. Although I had read scriptural accounts of Maya, they had not given me the deep insight that came with the personal visions and their accompanying words of consolation. One's values are profoundly changed when he's finally convinced that creation is only a vast motion picture and that not in it, but beyond it, lies his own reality. As I finished writing this chapter, I sat on my bed in the lotus posture. My room was dimly lit by two shaded lamps. Lifting my gaze, I noticed that the ceiling was dotted with small mustard-colored lights, scintillating and quivering with a radium-like luster. Myriads of penciled rays, like sheets of rain, gathered on into a transparent shaft and poured silently upon me. How beautiful. At once my physical body lost its grossness and became metamorphosed into astral texture. I felt a floating sensation. As barely touching the bed, the weightless body shifted slightly and alternately to left and right. I looked around the room. The furniture and walls were as usual, but the little mass of light had so multiplied that the ceiling was invisible. I was wonderstruck. This is the cosmic motion picture mechanism. A voice spoke, as though from within the light, shedding its beam on the white screen of your bed sheets. It is producing the picture of your body. Behold, your form is nothing but light. So therefore we are also light. We are all specks of light and like little specks of the same light. So we are all rays, and therefore it's important to spread the light. It is important to connect Sangat so that they also become light. So like Guruji said, Sangha Joro, because that is when our awakening happens. By giving, we are receiving that much more. I gazed at the arms and moved them back and forth, yet could not feel their weight. An ecstatic joy overwhelmed me. This cosmic stem of light, blossoming as my body, seemed a divine replica of the light beams streaming out of the projection booth in a cinema house and manifesting as pictures on the screen. For a long time, I experienced this motion picture of my body in the dimly lit theatre of my own bedroom. Despite the many visions I have had, none was ever more singular. As my illusions of a solid body was completely dissipated, and my realization deepened that the essence of all objects is light. I looked up to the throbbing stream of life-trons and spoke entreatingly. Divine light, please withdraw this, my humble bodily picture, into thyself, even as Elijah was drawn up to heaven by a flame. This prayer was evidently startling. The beam disappeared. My body resumed its normal weight and sank on the bed. The swarm of dazzling ceiling lights flickered and vanished. My time to leave this earth had apparently not arrived. Besides, I thought philosophically, the prophet Elijah might well be displeased at my presumption. So beautiful, we are all, as I said, a speck of light. And to brighten this light, we must keep praying, keep doing the mantra japa, as Guruji used to say, because that is what gives the light the energy. So it's important to live by his hukam and do the mantra japa, listen to the Gurbani, stay in a very positive, like you said, ke positive raya karo bas. It's very important to stay in a positive space. Just to give you a little bit of just a little gist of how our vibration can change at a minute's notice. So last night I was, I couldn't sleep. I just got back from Goa and I decided to just randomly switch on the Netflix. I very barely watch TV and I watched this movie. I love Sandra Bullock. So I watched her latest movie, The Unforgivable. What a dark movie it was. And, I was quite elevated to begin with. And after watching it, my energy just dipped. So never, what my learning was, like Guruji said, hamesha positive socho, changi poop movies dekho, comedies dekho, and acha socho, acha bolo, acha karo. Because that keeps our vibration level high and it actually brightens our light. And instead, watching the news or watching movies which are a little dark, it dampens our spirit and it dims the light. So it's an everyday learning. So do things which add joy to your day, add joy to your soul, and stay happy and healthy with a very, very positive mindset. Always be happy, think good. This affirmations and creative visualization also enables us to stay in a positive space. Thank you so much. Jai Guruji. Looking forward to tomorrow.
Thank you, Auntie. Thank you. Thank you, Sangatji. Jai Guruji.